So this is a session on essential leadership skills in the new normal world. We're all, aware of the fact that this pause button that we've hit leads us to believe that there is a new normal that we will all have to practice. We'll all have to be mindful of, and we'll all have to be looking at right now. Day before yesterday, we talked about the fact that we have now firmly entered the VUCA world. VUCA as a concept is something that the US Military College came up with in the post-Cold War. But VUCA today is more relevant than at any other point of time because we've entered an extremely volatile world where the rate of change is in geometric progression right now. It is not in arithmetic progression anymore. Either you can go up or you can come down in absolute geometric progression. And this is something which is this is a very crazy world that we are living in, very interconnected, and the change can be very rapid. So literally, each of us can be potentially sitting on a whirlpool, which means you can get sucked in and you can get either taken right to the top or you can get tossed around. We're also in a world which is very uncertain, primarily because of the fact that there is absolutely no clarity about the future. What is going to happen? It's very difficult to hold a crystal ball and try and guess what the future actually holds. Very complex world in the sense that the decision factors that were earlier there have multiplied right now. So each of us is going to confront the fact that it is not going to be a simple 1 + 1 is equal to 2. Be prepared for 1 + 1 is equal to 11. Be even more ready for 1 + 1 becoming 111. That's the kind of change, that's the kind of complexity that we're going to face. And there is no right answer. I think in the new normal world, it's going to be very difficult for us to have a black and a white. I have a feeling there are going to be many different shades of gray in between the white and the black. And we've got to get used to this kind of an ambiguity. So in this VUCA world, what are the kind of leadership skills that we require is what we're going to examine today. And I'm sure by the end of this 1 hour, each of us will have some takeaway in terms of what we can do with the people and the companies that we deal with. I'd like to begin this session by paying tribute to one of the greatest thinkers from India. He was the first person who actually went up and positioned India as a huge thought leader in the entire world. At a time when India was, the stock of India was going down, and Swami Vivekananda actually more than 120 years ago is someone who went into the world and re-established India as a thought leader. And look at what he has to say about 120 years ago, which is even relevant even more right now. All the powers in the universe are ours. It is we who have put our hands before our eyes and we cry that it is dark. And that's the kind of situation that we are in right now. So ladies and gentlemen, this is a firm article of faith as far as I'm concerned, that every single power that we want, everything that we need is already with us. I'm very sure that at the end of today, we will rekindle some of those powers that are there within us, and we'll try and figure out how we can get some answers to move to the future with a lot of confidence. So just a quick exercise for all of us. This reboot button that has been forcibly thrust upon all of us right now. I'd like you to list one change that you think will happen to your world at either a personal level, which is, in personal, I mean completely I or me or myself, not family. At a family level, what kind of a change do you think will happen? From a professional or a business or a career perspective, what do you think is a change that will happen in the future? From a societal perspective, what will happen? And from a mindset perspective, what do you think is going to happen in your life? So let me tell you one thing that will definitely happen, my friends. All of these aspects, whether it is, personal or family or professional, societal, mindset, there is going to be an enormous change in all of this. And this is going to become extremely important for us when we want to go ahead in life. Okay. From a personal perspective, I think we all need to spend a lot of me time. Okay. In this hurly-burly of getting somewhere in life, we've just not spent any time with ourselves. And one thing that I'd like to recommend to all of you is that on a daily basis, whether it is half an hour or 45 minutes or 1 hour or whatever time you can actually steal, no phone, nothing, just sit down, think about yourself and try and figure out how are you going to be taking your life and moving it forward. From a family perspective, I think this is the best time for families to get together and to, to be together and to actually spend more time with each other. Professional business career, I think there's going to be an enormous amount of change. We have to become far more customer-centric than we were earlier. Customers are going to be, and especially from our customer perspective, we need to be far, far more, customer-centric. From a societal perspective, I personally believe that we are going to see a lot more, lot more things that will happen, which is this entire business of social distancing and this entire business of hygiene is going to be taken initially to very, very interesting levels, which is what I believe. And from a mindset, I think one thing that will definitely happen in the future, in this new normal, is that people are going to get more and more concerned about the way their life is headed and the direction in which their life is headed. I think these are some interesting things that are going to happen right through. Having said that, okay, let me take you through a process of what I call the decision-making continuum. There is a decision-making continuum that I'd like to share with all of you. If you see the early 80s and the 80s and the early 90s, and in this room, I think I have a couple of people who've been working at that time, Mr. Anand for sure, Vivek, me. If you look at the 80s and maybe some part of the 90s, a lot of decision making was vested in in an individual. So there was a lot of single person power that was happening at that time. And companies, the way they were led, were very autocratic. It was my decision and I was the guy and everybody was dependent on me and my taking a decision, right or wrong. That was the way things were in the 80s and the 90s. In the late 90s, things changed at once. Majority power became more important, boards became more important, people were getting more democratic even in organizations, and there was a lot of independence that was being given to people. Come the 2000s, there was a lot of collective power that we saw, especially after the entire IT boom and the IT revolution came in. There's a lot more consensus that was being involved, and we entered into what I call a very interdependent structure, even in the corporate world. Today, as we go into the future, here is my prediction. I think we will have the power of networks coming in at more than at any point of time. Your net worth is going to be the power of your network. Whether it is a professional network, whether it is a social network, whether it is a family network, whether it is a resident network, the kind of networks that you belong to is going to make a big change going forwards in the future. If this is the case, decision making is going to be in what I call a cooperative mode, which is a cooperative democracy that we're going to be seeing. And collaboration is going to be the key going forward. So if you look at collaboration, this is the key decision making that we're going to be seeing going forward. We explored this yesterday in some detail, and we will continue to keep exploring how we need to start collaborating. And in the process of collaborating, the kind of leadership, the kind of mindset that we need to adopt is what we're going to be looking at a little today. So let's see the circles of motivation. You see, motivation actually is a combination of two words, motive and action. Okay. So if you look at motive and action, in the 80s, it had a lot to do with what should be done, what needs to be done. And a lot of us who were working in the 80s, you'd agree with me, that at that time, motivation was telling people what to do. In the 90s, it became how to do it. In the 2000s, it became why should you do this? The future is going to be entirely about this WIFM factor, which is what's in it for me. What will happen in the future is that an enormous amount of decisions are going to be driven with this what's in it for me feeling. So whether it is your employees, whether it is your colleagues, whether it is your customers, whether it is your customer's customer, everybody is going to be asking you the simple question, what's in this whole thing for me? Okay? And that is going to be the biggest motivator going forward. Now, I call these people the inheritors, I generation. And what I'd like to do is that I want to open up a little bit of a discussion on this platform. And we've seen through Gen Next and Gen Y and things like that. We are now getting into what I call the I generation. We're firmly in the I generation. And in the I generation, I'd like you guys to comment and share with us what you think will be happening as far as the I generation is concerned. What will this I generation be like, according to you? Anybody? I mean, the generation that is, born after the 1990s, or even, who are now coming into the workforce. What do you think will be the way this I generation, how will you deal with this I generation? What do you think of them? This is even post the millennials. We're talking of this particular generation that has entered the workforce. Would anybody like to open this dialogue?
Will they be more independent?
Okay, you think they'll be more independent, Ranjit? That's a good thought.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anybody else? Just go ahead, unmute yourself and tell. Yeah, Sudhir, go ahead.
Yeah, Ram, I think firstly, old forms of behavior will be debunked. Okay. Norms like, the guys like us who are been used to being addressed as sir and making way for it, all those protocols will be thrown to the winds. Okay. Knowledge and reasoning is, I think, going to be the most valued competence of one another. Respect, which was either based on, age or seniority, all those things will be secondary. Respect will be primarily coming from whether you are considered to be successful, one. Secondly, how well do you put across or communicate matters to one another? Okay. So this is what I consider to be the I generation's attitude. Super. Anybody else? Wonderful. Thanks, Sudhir. Great inputs.
Sir, if I may.
Yes, please. Go ahead, Suhas.
Sir, Generation I, they will have a single thing. You will never have this hierarchical structure that will work. Okay. We will have to think more horizontally.
Okay.
So, as you said, right from day one, right from the design or the start of a project, we will have to include everyone, tell them their roles, their responsibilities, and leave them on their own. Because too much of, if we get into too much of their work, micromanagement, they will repel.
Okay. Very interesting.
We have experienced a little of these, so I just shared these.
Oh, sure. No, I think it's a great point, Suhas. I completely agree with you.
So micromanagement doesn't work at all.
Certainly. I think that's a great point that you make. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Anybody else? Purnima, you do a lot of work in the IT sector, Purnima. Would you like to share with us? What do you think will the I generation be like working with them?
Ram, so yeah, I mean, I think, micromanagement would be gone. And then I think we should start enabling people, and we should give them the inputs that is required for their work initially. And then, wherever they are stuck, we should just give them the right support.
Okay.
And then, leave them independently as much as possible, so that we get more and more productivity from them.
Okay. Wonderful. Very interesting, Purnima. Thank you for that share, Purnima. Truly appreciate that. Shankar?
According to my knowledge, iGeneration will keep changing according to the knowledge.
Okay.
There will be no certain time for the thing. They take much risk in the management as well as in the acquiring the knowledge.
Okay. Wonderful. Any of my friends from Chennai would like to comment? Sheila or Sitaram? Ramalingam, sir? Go ahead, sir.
Actually, looking at it very critically, number one, their attention span will be very limited. But whereas the bandwidth, the intention to acquire knowledge and the skills will be a lot more. And it also there's going to be, the consistency will not be there in whatever they are doing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Ramalingam, sir. Yes, sir, Vivek, go ahead.
See, I think distinctly there are going to be two segments in the side generation. One who will be security minded, the other who are independent and who are loyal to the profession rather than to the organization. Okay. And now this COVID thing has thrown up a situation where the importance of the workforce has been realized. Okay. So I think the workforce is going to become, the workforce, I mean, the people who do actually the hands and legs job, like in my case, weavers or, lathe operators and, people who deliver, people who give a certain amount of service, whom we have taken for granted so far, their importance is going to become, more. So there is going to be a, dovetailing of the knowledge worker with the, for want of a better word, menial worker. Okay. And there is not going to be any more loyalty to an organization. There is probably going to be more loyalty to the aspirations of the individual and his profession. Is how I look at it.
So let me introduce you to the inheritors, the I generation, because the future belongs to this generation. Okay, these are all people who are maybe 30 and below, and it is this generation that is going to inherit the future that we are talking about. Irrespective of how old you are today, it is this generation that is going to get on with it. Okay, so what is the I generation like? Sorry. Gen I is going to be impatient. Gen I is going to be very impudent. It's going to be very impertinent. It's going to be very in your face. And we've got to get used to that fact. Okay? Gen I is not going to be that patient, loyal, don't talk when elders talk kind of a generation. So Gen I is going to be in your face, and we've got to get used to the fact that it is this generation which is going to constantly keep asking you a simple question. All this is great. What's in it for me? And Gen I is also a very interesting generation. They have been grown up, they've all grown up on a diet of success stories. So to them, and here is a mindset change that all of us will have to be prepared for. The mindset change is Gen I will be more in terms of wealth and not in terms of income. Because Gen I is constantly being bombarded with news that so-and-so friend of mine has started a startup and he has got a funding and he's got 2 crores, and he's got 5 crores, and he's got 10 crores, and he's got 20 crores, and so on and so forth. We have got to get used to the fact that they are being constantly bombarded with this kind of information. So they are not going to be in the income issue. Gen-I will be more in terms of wealth than in terms of income. So their whole thing will be, how can you help me create more wealth? How can this experience of working with you be about wealth generation? But I want you to also keep in mind one thing. Gen-I is the most innovative group of people. They are the most inventive. They are the most ingenious. Gen-I is also the most imaginative, the most inspired, the most independent group of people that you can find anywhere in the world. And this is the beauty of Gen-I. Now, the choice that we as leaders have is, which Gen-I do we want to talk to? Are we going to be stuck in the rut and think of Gen-I as an impatient, impudent, impertinent, in-your-face generation? Or are we going to talk about Gen-I with italics and figure out saying, this is the innovative, inventive, ingenious, imaginative, inspired, independent group? I think we should be speaking to this group. I think we should have the humility to look at this group and tell them that, look, we need to bring in more young people, because look at the kind of innovations that are happening across the world right now in the way people are tracking, even in this current situation of the COVID. The kind of tracking that is happening, the kind of mathematical models that are being built, are all being built by Gen-I. And that's the interesting part. So my suggestion, don't talk to the Gen-I with a capital I, but speak to the Gen-I, which is italics, which is a small I. And if you can do that, then you're going to give a huge amount of creativity that will come to the fore as far as this entire group is concerned. If this is the case, then here is the kind of leadership model that I'm building for all of you. To lead Gen-I, you need to bring volatility into vision. You need to bring uncertainty to understanding. You need to get complexity into clarity. And you need to get ambiguity into agility. We examined this a couple of days ago, but today let me tell you from a leadership perspective, this is what Gen-I requires from us. The wisdom that we can share with Gen-I is very clearly this, that how can you have a clear intent about being future ready? What can we communicate to them? How do we listen to them? In terms of understanding, don't interrupt them. Leave them. And they're going to be coming up, they're going to appreciate the understanding that you're going in. Encourage them to think out of the box. Encourage them to think of the options. Encourage them to think about the consequences that they will have. And that will give them a tremendous amount of clarity. And that is what they're going to be appreciative of. And teach them to try hard. Let them fall. Let them learn. And let them get up again and again and again and again. In a VUCA world, this is the kind of leadership skills that we need to get ready to grab the opportunities that are there in the marketplace and capitalize on them. This is what we need to be doing, and this is what we really need to look at. So what are a couple of leadership models? Let me try and get there. One of the finest definitions of leadership, according to me, is leadership is the significant action by an individual member that influences group achievement when he or she is directing the activities of a group towards a shared goal or objective. Look at the beauty of this definition. It talks about everything in a very holistic way. It says it's the significant action by an individual member, which means it is not by a leader. It is not by an appointed leader in your organization. So the youngest person in the organization can take that particular lead right now. And it is this action that influences group achievement. When he or she is directing the activities of a group towards a shared goal or objective. Amongst all of this, let me tell you that it is this word that is the most important word from a leadership perspective. It is the significant action that an individual can take. And I'll tell you why. You know, in the scriptures in India, it is written that there are 4 types of action. The first action is inaction, of not doing anything. The second kind of an action is reaction, where somebody tells you to do something and you're doing it. The third kind of action is inefficient action, where your heart is not in the action that you want to perform. And the highest kind of action is significant action. So what Generation I will be led by is an opportunity to give them to do significant action. Now, you can't keep doing only significant action the whole day. You will have to have a combination of inaction, reaction, inefficient action. But on a daily basis, is it possible for us to come up with a leadership model that will get these young people to start thinking in terms of significant action? And if we can do that, then that is something that will help us a fair amount. So, what is significant action? Significant action simply means it is the art of moving from what is to what can be. It's that simple. Significant action is the art of moving from what is to what can be. So if we can make that mindset shift change in our minds of moving away from what is the current normal to the new normal. And that is the whole business of significant action. I will share a couple of examples of what I mean by this. But before that, let me introduce to you this concept called volition. Now, volition is a much reviled word in the world of leadership. But today, volition is something which is very, very important. And I'll explain what volition is all about. Volition is basically a commitment that comes from a deep personal attachment to a certain intention or an end objective. It's a deep personal attachment to a certain intention. It is a conscious choice to make things happen. Concrete things, not just by doing things, but by making things happen. By taking that significant action. That is the power of volition. And when you practice volition, you will not have any starting trouble. You will have no implementation issues. You will face no obstacles. The power of volition, this is one of the interesting things that you will see that has yielded results in the near past and will continue to yield results in the near future. So if we can all practice this whole theory called volition. Now, unfortunately, what happens with volition is that it is not a very popular theory. And I'll tell you why it is not very popular. Because unfortunately, people like Hitler, people like Mahatma Gandhi have all been credited with practicing this particular theory. But in the corporate world where we are right now, I will share with you 3 or 4 examples of how this entire power of volition has helped bring change and has helped deliver results. So this is a particular thing that I'd like every one of us to start practicing on a daily basis, the power of volition. Okay? If we can start integrating this, so look at what it means. It is a commitment that comes from a deep personal attachment to a certain intention or an end objective. It is a conscious choice to make things happen and concrete things, not just by doing things, but making things happen. And when you become a volition, advocate, there is no starting trouble. There are no implementation issues. There are no obstacles. You will just go out and do what is required to be done. And that's what you're going to be doing. So there are 4 different leadership skills. And if you'd like to, you can make a note of this, that I believe are going to define the future and whatever we're going to be doing as far as the future is concerned. The first one is what I call a visionary kind of a leadership. You know, we talked about VUCA and we said from volatility, we need to move to vision. So what is the kind of leadership that will help you create a vision within your organization? The first is that you need to practice what I call a visionary leadership. This is something which is very, very important. What is it? What does this mean? You must have a strategic vision or a goal that excites the entire team. Your team must get very excited about that strategic vision or that strategic goal that you have, and that should be something that you can do. You must be able to innovate and improvise. You must get people to focus on the big picture. That is something which is very, very important. We were working with this company called Reliance Trends, and I'm sure that a number of you people would have been, either buying from Reliance Trends or have seen Reliance Trends. Reliance Trends has become the biggest retailer of garments in the country. And when we started working with Reliance Trends about 10 years ago, they had a fantastic vision. And there was this gentleman called Sriram along with a gentleman called Arun Sardeshmukh and a whole team of people there. They had a fantastic vision. And their vision was that they are going to set up 180 stores in 180 days. And they went out and they did that. Because can you imagine the kind of stuff that you need to do? Plus, Reliance had a very, very interesting strategy. They didn't want to come in at the upper end of the segment. They decided consciously that they will come at the value end of the segment. And Reliance Trends will offer value for money clothes. And Reliance Trends will not get into huge discounts or, buy one, get one free kind of stuff. They were operating on volumes. And Sriram and Arun Sardeshmukh of Reliance Trends made sure that they opened one store every day for 180 days. Can you imagine what a complex exercise this is? Because in a Reliance Trend shop, you have literally about 5,000 to 6,000 different types of clothes available. If you look at men's clothes, the kind of shirts that you can get, the kind of trousers that you can get. If you look at kids' clothes, the kind of complexity. So they had to make sure that their factories were ready with the production. And they went in, did that. And Reliance Trends is a great example of a visionary leadership where people got very excited about the fact that they, in the shortest period of time, are going to be working for a company that is the biggest retailer of garments in this country. Now, that was the kind of vision that Sriram and Arun gave. So the first is visionary leadership. The second thing that we talked about is understanding. From uncertainty, we need to move into understanding. And the kind of leadership model that I'm talking about is what is known as resonant leadership. You need to make sure there is understanding through open and honest communication. There's a lot of active listening that needs to be done within the organization. And if we can do this, if we can practice this, then you will be able to successfully cascade the big idea that you've got through the organization. So active listening, open, honest communication is what you will require when you need to get this kind of leadership happening. Another of the companies that we work with is a company called Sansera. And F.R. Singhvi, the managing director, the joint managing director of Sansera, had a very interesting way to get people interested in the entire activity that they had. They had a plan, and their plan was to make sure that they become the biggest manufacturer of a product called a rocker arm in the world. And that was the kind of vision, that was the kind of big idea that F.R. Singhvi and Shekhar Vasan had. And they went and successfully cascaded this whole thing, this whole vision, through absolutely open, honest communication, through a process of very active listening. So the U part of VUCA, which is understanding is what you can use through something called resonant leadership. The third is what I call authentic leadership. If, we said complexity to clarity to get out of this VUCA challenge that we are in. If you want to get into clarity, there must be a complete transparent and consistency of communication. The biggest reason why Gen I can get extremely disturbed is because of the fact that you're not very transparent or not very consistent, and there is no clarity of thought. And this is the capacity to build trust by being dependent and persistent. And I'll show you an example of one person who did this extremely well. This was a gentleman called Mr. Biradar, who used to lead a company called Makino. Makino had a very interesting challenge. Their challenge was that their machines, Makino primarily makes machines that makes machine tools. So Makino had to completely reinvent itself. And for that, he needed the help of every single person on the shop floor, every single person in the sales team, every single person in the company to work with him, to work alongside and make sure that idea. So what was the idea? To move into a situation by which they could reduce the weight of their entire machine. It's not easy. It's a very difficult thing to do. But Biradar and his team managed to foster a certain level of involvement in Makino, and they managed to completely reinvent themselves like a phoenix and come out and do some absolute wonders in Makino. The final is what I call win-win leadership. We talked about the final part of VUCA, which is agility. If you want to make the team agile, you need to enhance the belief in self and the team. You need to get the spirit of I can and we can. That is something that you need to do. And how do you do that? You must have a roadmap and a destination. You must be able to bring down the time to market. Because in this VUCA world, we don't have the luxury of time. Everything, my friends, is going to be defined today from in the future in terms of time. Nobody is going to be, time is going to become the measure of success. Nobody but nobody, the old measures of money or resources are going to go bust. And people are only going to talk in terms of time. So if we need to do flawless implementation, there is this gentleman called Annadurai, the man behind Mission Mangal. And ISRO made sure that from a situation of launching one satellite every 5 years, ISRO has now moved into a situation where they are launching 5 to 10 satellites a month. Now that's the kind of agility that you needed. And because of the fact that ISRO managed to move from one satellite a month to 5 to 10 satellites a month, one satellite a year to 5 to 10 satellites a month, they're able to reduce the cost of the satellite. They're able to increase the benefit of, they're able to bring a huge cost benefit to their entire satellites. When I was speaking to Mr. Annadurai, and I asked him, I said, sir, how do you get the team to become so agile? How do you believe themselves? He made a very interesting statement to me. He said, we are the only business now where I can't send the satellite up and bring it down, do some course corrections and send it back into space. Once it's gone, that's it. There's nothing I can do about it once it is gone. So you can imagine the kind of agility and belief that the team needed to do this. So these are the 4 for the future, according to me. One is to have that visionary leadership, to have that big idea. The second is to practice resonant leadership, enhance understanding. You must evoke interest. You must have a system by which you can have a lot of authentic leadership, by which you can foster a huge amount of involvement. And finally, you must have a win-win leadership, which means you have absolutely flawless implementation in whatever you do within the organization. So these are the things that I'd like to recommend to all of you. Visionary leadership, the kind of leadership skills that we require to capitalize on the opportunities that are available tomorrow. And I'm 100% sure that in this process, keep in mind what we talked about, that we need to bypass the recovery phase and we need to get in very firmly into the regeneration phase. And if we can get into this phase with these kinds of leadership skills, then there is no doubt in my mind that your companies will prosper, your companies will grow. The audience is changing, your employee profile is changing, your customer profile is changing. What you need to do now is to incorporate all or some of these leadership styles and make sure that you can capitalize on the market.